Okay, notes 1-3 throws in the properties of numbers. Notice this is just again the order of operations. It's the exact same thing that we did in section 2. It is GEMDAS, but this time we have to use or explain which one of these properties that we used to simplify as we're simplifying this problem. So we still have to follow GEMDAS. So inside GEMDAS, we do have this grouping symbol. So we have to simplify the numbers inside the grouping symbol. Inside the grouping symbol, we have division before we have subtraction. So we have to do the division first. And since we know 15 divided by 3 has a value of 5, then what we're doing down here is we're saying 15 divided by 3 is equal to 5. And the property that we're using is going to be the substitution property, because we have values that we know that are equal. We have this value equal to this value. So 15 divided by 3 is equal to 5. So we're going to take the 15 divided by 3 out, and we're going to put the value that it's equal to in its place. So right here, we're going to replace that 15 divided by 3 with its value. That's called substitution. And usually, anytime we do addition, subtraction, multiplication, or division, that's what we're going to do. We're going to substitute that value in. There are a few exceptions when we're adding 0, or when we're adding the opposite, or when we're multiplying by 1, or when we're multiplying by 0, or when we're multiplying by the reciprocals. Those are the exceptions. Adding 0 has its own property. Adding the opposites of each other, that has its own property. Multiplying by 1 has its own property. Multiplying by 0 has its own property. And multiplying by reciprocals also has its own property. So that's the only exception. So we're going to continue to work through this problem. And the next thing we're going to have to do is here 5 minus 5. So we're still going to be carrying all this other stuff along. 15 times 1 minus 9 plus 2 times. And here we have 5 minus 5. That is this property here, where we are adding the opposite. We're saying 5 plus a negative 5, and we're getting the number 0. So we are substituting the value 0 in, but because this is that special property, it's not going to be called substitution. Instead, it's said that we use the additive inverse. That is the special property that says when you add a number to its opposite, you're always going to get 0. Now we're going to multiply by 0. Multiplying by 0 also has its own property. Here's multiplying by 0. We know when we multiply by 0, we're going to get 0 for an answer. So that property that we're using here is the multiplicative property of 0. Multiplicative property of 0, and that happened to give us 0. 2 times 0 is 0. Okay, so now we are going to continue with the order of operations, and it says that we are going to multiply first. Multiply before we add or subtract. So we're going to multiply 15 times 1, and we're going to get 15. Okay, and again, multiplying times 1 is its own property. So 15 times 1 is the multiplicative identity. Identity is when you do something and it doesn't change the value. So adding 0 is an identity, and multiplying by 1 is an identity. Multiplicative identity. So 15 times 1 gives me 15. And I didn't give myself enough spaces. Your test will come with the spaces, so it's kind of going to give you some idea of how many steps you should have. And then out beside them, you will put the properties, okay? So 15 minus 9, I believe 15 minus 9 is 6. If I'm doing my mental math correctly, 15 minus 9 is 6. And that was substitution because it wasn't any one of those special properties. I just took two numbers and subtracted them and replaced it with its value. Substitution property of equality. And then 6 plus 0 is 6. That is its own property right here. Anytime you add 0, it doesn't do anything, so it maintains its identity. But because it was addition, we do have to list it as additive property. Or, I'm sorry, additive identity. Okay, so that would be, and that problem is on your test. I will give you this has been this list of words right here, this entire list of words, and I think including these two as well. Yeah, this entire list of words has been added to a little piece of cardstock. Some of you got it in class on Friday, some of you didn't get it, but I have it for you and I will give it to you. So you don't have to have the names memorized, but you do have to have this over here memorized. Okay, so you do have to have the part that it explains what it is. You do have to have that memorized. You will be able to see these words, okay? So the next one says that Emmy is building furnishings for her first apartment. She buys a couch, a lamp, a rug, and a table. The total cost of these items, and it says lists them, okay? So this is example 2. We have 450 plus 5550 plus 4350 plus 75. And this is an example of the commutative property, which says that for both addition and multiplication, we can rearrange the order in which numbers are given to us. So this one right here, why would I need to rearrange these? Because these are whole numbers and these have decimals, okay? And the whole numbers can be added together easy, and these decimals should be able to be added together easy. So if I want to, I can rearrange these numbers and make my addition a little bit easier. And now I rearranged these two, and I didn't have to, but it's fine that I did. And then so that property right here that allows me is the commutative property. And just think about the root word right there, commute. Commute means to move. I move my body from my car, from my house to my school every morning. That is a commute. My drive is the commute. So the act of moving is what commute means. So I commuted those around, and then the associative property says that I can group these together and add these two together, and then add these two together, and then once I get the sum of each one of those, I'll be able to add those two together. That's what the associative property says. And it works for both addition and it also works for multiplication. So 450, that's 525. 450 plus 75, that's 525. We know this 75 right here is 50 plus 25. So 450 plus 50 is an easy 500, and then the extra 25. Over here, we've got the 250 cents, which makes a whole dollar. So let's say this is $44 and this is $55. That's going to make 9 and 9. So that's, I believe, $99. Okay, and now those are easy to add together, because if it was $100, it would be $625, but it's one less, so it's $624. Okay, and adding those together first, that's the associative property. It doesn't matter, again, which order you add them in. You can add these two and then add those two to that one, and then add those two, that sum to that one, or you can add these two, and then add their sums. So associative property says it doesn't matter which way you add. Doesn't matter which ones you multiply first. Okay, and the same thing is true for the last example on this page. We've got 2 times 8 times 5 times 7. It might be easier to do 2 times 5 and then 8 times 7. That is the commutative property. And you can multiply 2 times 5 and get 10, and then we can do 8 times 7 and get 56, and that's the associative property that lets us do those two first and then do those two. 10 times 56 would be 560. Notice you would get the same answer if you did 2 times 5 first and then times 8 and then times 7. That would be 10 times 8, which would be 80, and then times 7, that would be 560. So again, it's just the order in which we multiply them together doesn't matter. That's what the associative property says. All right.